You want the following for your little farmhouse chair. You want some pasteboard. You want some thread that's kind of the color of what caned chairs would be. Sanding, a lot of sanding involved. So you want that. Whatever colors you want to use. I'm going to show you how to make it look aged, but you may want like a middle color. I chose blue. Your glue, you're going to want more than one blade for your Exacto because we are essentially whittling. And then assorted other items. So as far as toothpicks go, of course, if you have the square ones, that's great, or you're going to have to square them off, approximately 3. If you have the small ones, like these are bamboo ones, that's great, a couple of those, and then your standard toothpick. If you don't have these small ones, you're just going to sand these down a lot. Okay, so here are your dimensions. So we will make the front legs, and these are the ones we're actually going to kind of whittle. Here's your seat. It's squared. Back legs, these are the ones that are squared, and these are quite long. So it's a good portion of your toothpick here. So your back legs, all right, so your back struts, those things that go across the top, and your rungs, and then these are for the supports, that go around the bottom of the chair. So those are those, and these are also in the description. All right, let's get started. Let's do some whittling. So we're going to make our front legs. So we need, we're going to need that, not that one. We're going to need 2 of the round toothpicks. I'm going to give this a little bit of a sand. It looks a little bit uneven. So what I've done here is I've already cut off the tip of this. I'm going to grab another one here. I don't know where my other one went. It rolled away. So I want those to be the same. I'm going to clip the end of this as well. All right. If I haven't done that great of a clip, which those cutters tend to be a little bit off, then I want to go ahead and see if I can even that out. Not too bad. So let's whittle. So these are your front legs. These are going to be 1.8 in length. So I want to mark that. Let's get the markings. Then what I can do, that'll be the bottom, is I can go up about 3 centimeters or so, draw another line, then another couple centimeters or so, I'm sorry, millimeters, and then I'm going to come up here, oops, and I got those off, and then I'll come up here and I'll do like another 3 centimeters. So no matter where they are, if you just eyeball it or what have you, that's my bottom. Okay. Now, whittling time. You didn't think we could do this because we don't do the full scale, but oh, we can do it. So I'm going to put my Exacto knife down on that, and I'm going to make a notch, and I'm going to keep turning and making that notch until I get to the other side. And sometimes it helps to go part of the way around and then start and go back. I have to be careful here. I can't go all the way through. Then what I do is I just take my fingernail and I kind of get that evened out a little bit. Then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to kind of wiggle this a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep doing that until I like the whittling job. But I do have to be careful, because the more that I mess with this, the more that I'm going to the more that I am actually going to weaken that wood. So anyway, I'll finish that off camera. And then I had a mark that I lost, but I'm going to do the same thing here. So I have this one here, I'm going to do this one here, and then I'm going to do it again up here at the top. So I will do that. I'll do that on both of them, making sure that they do match up, and then I'm going to trim them to the proper size. Okay, but don't trim them to the proper size until after you do your little fake lathe here, or else it's kind of a hassle. Once you have your little legs ready to go, and you might notice, I think it's going to be very difficult to tell. However, at the bottom, which is where the two notches that are close together are, I tried to sort of round that a little bit, just soften that off a little bit, whereas I don't have to do it on the top side that's going to attach underneath the seat. It just makes that a little bit more finished looking. So the next thing that we can do is we can do the front one. Now, the front strut, I mean. So the front strut is, let me see here. All of these are 1.4. So what I want to do here is very, very similar to what I did here, except I'll go up here and I'll take that off, and I'll measure my 1.4. Let's see here. Looks like 1.4 would be approximately there. Okay, so half of 0.4 is going to be 7. So I want to kind of try to find the middle there. And on either side of that middle, I can go ahead and draw the places where we're actually going to whittle that. So essentially find the middle, and then a little bit on either side, maybe that's a millimeter or so. I'm going to go ahead and use the same technique to whittle the front. Now, something about this though, and if you're able to do it, you want to kind of soften both sides of this. If you're able to use part of your toothpick, that's fine, but they won't be perfectly even, okay? And another thing about toothpicks, by the way, I know some toothpicks have notches in them, but in my experience, they aren't quite small enough for what we need. Like they're too far apart, the spacing's too far apart. But if you find some, then obviously you wouldn't need to do this part, or you wouldn't need to do as much. So I'm going to go ahead and make my 2 notches here and trim this down and sand it to a softened end on each side. Now for an easy part, and that is your back strut on the bottom and the side struts on the bottom. So all you're going to do is cut your round toothpicks, are perfectly fine. Don't forget to sand. And you're cutting these down to 1.4. So 3 of these at 1.4. No big deal. So I tried to sort of soften the ends, round off those ends a little bit on these side pieces. So now I have all the bottom struts, the front of the front 2 legs. So now is time for the squared off toothpicks. If you don't have square toothpicks, then you're going to need to sand until they're squared off for this particular style. So what I'm going to do here for my whittling is actually not particularly difficult. And if you're able to use a ruler to do this, great. If not, just eyeball it to the best of your ability. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the old Exacto here, and we're just going to do a line down the middle. We do not want to cut this in half, of course, but essentially, and I can kind of use my ruler to a certain extent. I'm going to show you without the ruler. I'm just taking it and I'm making a line down the middle of this. And when I have a decent line, I'm just going to go back and kind of whittle this out a little bit. And I can straighten that and so forth. But I'm going to go ahead and I'll do that for, I would go ahead and do it 3 times because these will be what turns into the back and the back legs. So you'll have 2 like that with the lines in them. And these legs are 3.6 centimeters long or high, however you want to look at that. Then this third toothpick is for the 2 back struts here, and those have lines on them as well. So I'm just going to make the line down the middle. I want to make sure, you know, that I'm very careful not to cut all the way through, but it's kind of the same skill as that. I've found sometimes I can get my ruler to work with it, sometimes not. Just kind of, you know, fool around with that a little bit until you can get a decent line on that. Okay, and then cut them, and I'll be back. Time for these little fellas. So what I did is I took my smallest toothpick size, and it happens to be these bamboo toothpicks, and I just nipped off the very end of one side. So I just basically dulled it slightly. Now what I'm doing here is I'm about to cut. It's only 7 millimeters. All right, these are super small, and it looks like I even have to trim one of those. And I'm using that dulled pointed edge to help me. What my goal is, and this one's better than that one, is to match how it is whittled down, honed down on one side on the other side. So if I take this, I'm going to go ahead and trim this. And it never hurts to do a little more than you need. I'm sorry. Leave a little more than you need. Okay, so like that, split a little bit. All right, so here's your challenge. You're going to take your Exacto. You're going to try to hold this down toward the middle of it. And then you're going to whittle a little bit. Careful to not cut off the end too much. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to match it enough so that when I sand it, I have an easier job of getting that done right. So I'm just going to go around here. Oops. I'm just going to keep going around and doing that. And then when I get it to where I don't have to do as much sanding, and I have this whittled down fairly well here, then I'm hoping you don't have really large hands, because this is difficult. You have to try to hold this in the middle and then sand and keep sanding and then rounding off the end and sanding this until both sides match. And like I said, this one's a little better, but I could do a little bit more sanding. And so I'll just keep going around on that until they're nice and even, and then I'll double check to make sure that they're 7 millimeters as well. It's time for the chair, for the caned chair. So I changed to this pasteboard. It's slightly thinner. You could use cardstock if you have a nice thick cardstock, because what's happening here is you're going to cut this square with the hole in the middle. You're going to put your threads on here, glue your threads on here, and then you're going to put the second one, you're going to cut a second one, and it's going to go on top like a frame. So it's going to sandwich this in like a frame. Now, that means that it's really important that when you go to cut this and you're cutting two squares, and they are 1 by Boy, you can't see that, but they're 1 by 8 by 1 by 8. The inside, basically you're just going to measure over, about 3 millimeters or so. So what I'm going to do, well, first of all, I want to tell you that because these are going to be a sandwich, it's really important that they match up properly. So if you're off on the one a little bit, you need to make sure you're off on the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these, and then I'll start back up again here. So I cut out the squares, and now what I'm doing is I'm going to make this hole in the middle. So I measured in about 2 millimeters or so, and I drew it first because I don't want to go past these corners. So this is the way that it'll help me when I'm cutting to not go past them. So another thing that will help me when cutting these, because it's important that they are exactly the same, is I can put a dot of glue, or I could do maybe a tiny piece of double stick tape. But I'm putting it only in the middle, not around the sides, just in the middle. And what I'm going to do is cut these at the same time. So that glue will help to hold this in place, because I really want to try to see if I can get my Exacto knife through both layers. So these squares will be identical. So these are identical. They're not perfect, but they're identical, and that's what's important. So now to cane your chair, what you're going to do is just cut yourself a bunch of pieces of thread. You could make them as long as you want them to be, but obviously they're just going to go across here, so they can be pretty small. I did that. I just kind of made a pile to make things go faster. Then what you're going to do is choose a slow drying glue. Like this takes a little bit longer. Don't use, any kind of super glue. The tacky glue will work, but what's happening is you're having to move very quickly, and you will have to reapply the glue before you get all the way to the other side. But the slower the glue dries, the easier it is on you. So I'm just going to put a thin coat, just enough to hold that thread down. And then I'm going to start weaving. So go ahead and take these, and oops, what happens here is, it's stuck to everything. It's a lie. I'm just going to go as close as I can to the edge, and I'm going to alternate. So I want to get these as close as possible, and I can pull them sort of tight. It'll help to straighten them. You can wait and pull several of them tight at a time. But I just keep going across, and if I remember to alternate, then it will kind of go flatter across there. If you don't remember to alternate, it doesn't mean you have to go and start again or anything like that, but it'll just it's as if you're actually weaving this. You're just going back and forth that way. So I'm going to continue to do this. After you make a few adjustments, you can kind of tug on this a little bit, like I said. When you get that the way that you want it, carefully pick this up. And it's at this point that we actually want to trim this. And we want to be very careful. And we're wanting to trim a little bit back from, I'm holding these at an angle, so I can do this a little bit back from the edge, because I don't want those to show. And later it's harder to cut these. So I'm doing like so around, kind of holding my scissors at an angle. And just getting those off like this. So, okay, so let's do this. All right, that's good to go. We want to go ahead and make sure that I have this the right way, because I know mine wasn't perfect. So I want to make sure that my frames sort of line up even if they aren't perfect. And looks like, let's see here. Try to figure out which end is my, there was one that was like a little bit bigger. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just sandwich these in between, and my seat is finished. So the thing about the seat is, it depends on how rustic you want your chair to look. So I was fine with leaving it this color, with just a little bit of aging. If you have a light color like this, then the way that you age it, if you want to, and like I'm saying here, is you can age it as much or as little as you want. Kind of depends on how you're going to paint it as well. So what you would do is very carefully, you can do it at this stage because you can keep this down on your board, is you can just take a Q-tip and put a tiny bit of probably brownish. This is pretty dark, but I'm getting a lot of the excess off, and I can just sort of dab this on there. Now the chair, probably in the corners and around the edge, would be the dirtiest, you know, because like that's not where you would be able to, and you can't see this all that well. You can't dust as well in those corners. So that's the area where you might want to have it aged or make it a little dirtier around the edges. So I'll do that, and it looks like I need to adjust that a little bit more. At this point, we can begin painting. So this is an example of a more rustic looking piece. I actually used 3 different colors to make this look this way. Some kind of brown, what have you. I decided blue, and then also white. So this looks as if, you know, originally the chair was, you know, maybe stained brown, and then somebody put blue, and then somebody put, you know, white, and then it chipped off and so forth. Now, let's say you don't want something quite that rustic. Well, what you can do is you don't use the brown underneath. And I'm going to show you how to get this effect, but essentially you just be using 2 colors here, and you'd be using 3 colors here. So this winds up being kind of your farmhouse, very rustic, old. This one can be, depending on how much sanding you do, this can be more like a shabby chic look. It can be just kind of a whitewash on here. Whatever you do, remember you're going to need to do it on this paper, which will come, it'll take the paint just a little bit differently. So particularly if you're going to do it this way, you're going to have to take a little bit more care on your seat. So here's what we do, and you might need to wait to paint some of these after you glue it together. But I am going to first start with the brown, okay? And I'm going to pretty much keep my brush as dry as possible. This is just my base coat, so I do not need a lot of paint on here. So as I do this, it's almost like if I'm going to stain it. And if you're wanting to make this just look stained, you can. But the idea here is that this is just my first coat. Now, in between these coats, I do need to wait for it to dry, particularly between this first coat and the blue, because this is what is seeping into the wood the most, and it needs to be able to take 2 more layers of paint. Okay, so here's the front where I've done all my work. So I do want to make sure that I have a dry brush and that I get any excess. I want to paint in there, but I want to get any of that excess out of the hard work that I did to sort of whittle that out. So what I would do is I would do, you know, probably all of them with my first coat and then move on from there. It doesn't really matter. You could practice on one of these or practice on another toothpick. So there's that. When that is dry, then I'm going to put on the second one. Now we're ready for the thickest coat. So I chose blue. You choose whatever you want to show through here. So I do want this thick. I want it to cover up all of the brown, but I do still want to keep it out of my little whittled areas. But this will be the thickest because what's going to happen is when I put on the white is when I'm going to start sanding and distressing this. And so this, you know, the brown's going to come through naturally. The blue, you know, has to be able to withstand having yet another layer on top of it. So this is going to be, you know, a little bit thicker. Of course, when you're finished with your blue, go ahead and put on your white. This can be a thinner coat if you want. You can even see how if I take my finger and or I can use a Q-tip, and I do like that, I can get that distressed look without having to sand. But eventually, you'll probably have to sand some areas in order to get all of the layers to show. Alrighty, so let's replace some lost footage here and show the assembly as well. So I started with the back. I've already glued this top part on. The reason I did that is because when you go to do this, I would suggest being patient and waiting for this to be pretty dry. If not fully dry, then almost fully dry, because you need a good foundation for this. Okay, you need to use your board to help you and make sure that that's all nice and squared. It's going to really help you out. So, okay, so the next thing that I did is I looked at where is the placing that I need for this. Well, I've got these little fellas, and I can just use them to sort of help me with my placement. I know that my next step, or what I chose to make my next step, is going to be to glue these little guys in. So I just went and kind of took them and placed them in there to see where I wanted to do this. So basically it was around there. So we're going to give this a little bit of glue and go ahead and do that. So now I took this apart, so I kind of know exactly where it was. I'm cheating a little bit because I can see where the paint came off. But basically it's not, let me grab a tool here. It's not that big of a deal if you just use these little guys to help you. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this little guy in here. And I can tell that I need to move this down just a bit, because I don't want them to fall out, but also I don't want the hassle of having to take this off and re-glue. So I need to, at this point, so I know this little guy will fit. Okay, now I'm gonna pop him out of there because I want to use my board to help me, because I don't think this is even. In fact, it's definitely not. So I may need a little more glue there. Looks like it could be. Let's see here. Let me hold this puppy up. Okay. All right, I think that's better. Let me bring this. I'll pull this back here in a second, but I need to use my board. I don't want to put my head in the way. Okay. Oh, by the way, I put this piece of paper behind this to show you what this looks like. Maybe you need a contrast for that. You can see that there are flaws here because when I had the bottom part of the frame down and I was gluing everything, I didn't pull these really tight. Okay, and then press them down. So I got some waviness in here that I can adjust. I watered down a little bit of craft glue and kind of dabbed that on there and then did a few adjustments here and there. Once I get this put together, I can also continue to do adjustments. And I'm sure that if I decided to make more of these, you know, I'll get better at it, right? So I did want to show you, and for a farmhouse chair, I'm not too shook up about that, that it's not perfect, okay? But that, you know, you want to see that completed. So there we have it. So the next thing that we can do is we can put these little guys in here. So what I did, and I tend to eyeball things and probably shouldn't, okay? And you know, the way I did this is I just placed it on my board, like I said, and I kind of just was like, okay, here's my middle. And I do want to do my middle first and get that little guy in there, and then do my other two equal, you know, distance from each other. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a little bit of glue. We'll do that. And I did get one of these things, but I got to tell you, I don't know how I feel about it. It's got such a small tip that with tacky glue, I don't want too much glue. It can be a little bit difficult. So I'm going to turn this way so that I can work on it. Now these little guys do not need to be flat against the back the way that I have here. That's up to you. If you want to take your fingers and push it into the middle, in other words, in the middle of this bar, depth-wise. If you're like, what the heck are you saying? Then just ignore me. It's all right. It won't matter. Okay, so let's see how well I did. Not too bad. Alrighty. So now, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and do these little fellas too. Okay. And they can be doing their thing, drying and whatnot. I'm going to adjust that here in a second. Get this one in here. And this is also a good way to figure out if I put that bar the right distance. Now that I have 3 of these, I can tell even better how well did I do that. Come on, little guy. Okay. So I'm gonna, it's not quite equal on this one. This one's a little stiffer. I had a little bit more glue on this, so when I took this apart, it doesn't really want to go in there as nicely. Okay, so let's see. How did that do? Fairly well. Okie dokie. So I can adjust that before it dries in a minute. Okay, let's see how that, yeah, I could use a little more. I'll do that in a minute though. Okay, alrighty, so we have what I consider pretty good foundation. So, okay. These are obviously the front legs, okay? We've got the front bar that goes on the bottom. The strut is what I'm calling it. This is actually going to be then your back strut. Now, it got cut off a little bit when I edited this video, but I put in the dimensions as well as in the closed captions. And then I did have a transitional like overlay, title overlay that told you that I somehow, when I did mine, I found out that the dimensions were different. I thought that all 4 struts on the bottom would be the same, and it didn't work out. And I'll tell you, when I go to alter these from the real thing, things can go awry like that. I wish I were talented enough to just do it right the first time. But long story short, that's a lot of blah blah. But I want to do my back strut, which is one of the longer ones. Okay, this is the these are the different size. Okay, so if I hold these, actually the sides are the longer ones and the front ones are the, I believe, 1.4. But I have that in my dimensions in case I'm saying that wrong. I want this next because it's going to help me to hold this really nice and steady as I do this. Now this is going to require me to hold it a little bit because this is all the way at the bottom. This is all nice and tight in there, and this one isn't. Okay, so as far as measuring up, you know, I just found something I liked, and that's, I just kind of eyeballed how much it is. But if we really, you know, if we want to get at this, let me see if I've got my, here we go. Here's this little guy. And I can give you an idea. What are we talking about here? Oh, 4 or 3.4 or even almost 3. So what I'm talking about is the distance from the bottom up. And I might have that in my pattern. Okay, that I linked to. So, but I do need to check and make sure this is even, and of course it's not. Use my board to help me. And then I'm going to need to hold that. Okay, but in the interest of not making you watch me hold that, I'm going to go ahead and move along. I don't want that to be just all wonky. That'll be a waste of effort. Okay. So the next thing is kind of up to you. If you want to put the seat on, what I did is I went ahead and put these guys. Now, for the chair legs, you want the 2 notches. You want the one that has the 2 notches. That's the bottom. Okay, that goes toward the floor. So this should be squared. So it really shouldn't matter what you choose. You can see this tore a little bit from when I took this off. So I'm going to see about which one that may have been. Okay, something I discovered is that my tacky glue was a little bit weak. But I want to show you, in the interest here of moving forward, just how this is quite easy to do. And you're just going to put those in the corners, close to the corner. Alrighty. And forward. But I found when I was messing around with this, you might want to use like a super glue or something like that, because this is the pasteboard versus your wood, and so for strength. But if I screw that up right now, I'm going to be really salty. So I'm going to use the craft glue, even though I know that I used a stronger glue before, because I just don't want to screw up on camera. I have to do that all over again. I would not be pleased. So you have more time on your hands. So this is going to be my front. Okay. So now that, you know, when I would nicely, patiently wait, as I did not, then I can go ahead and I can put this on. Now, to help myself out, I can just scooch this puppy over. Grab this that rolled away. At least it didn't hit the floor like everything else. Gosh, you should hear. I'm sure you're the same way. When I go to vacuum, the sounds that the vacuum makes, because there are so many little pieces of this, that, and the other thing that have fallen onto the ground. And I'm like, dang it. I'm going to ruin my vacuum one of these days. So see, I can see that I would have splayed this a little bit. And I don't want that to happen. So I'm glad I didn't. I would have made a screw up. Anyway, I was trying to avoid that. Alrighty, so I'm going to use my board to help myself out. And at this point in time, I actually probably will just pause this camera because I've got to be patient about this and let it, you know, I can always adjust this kind of thing, right? Because I'm not dealing with it. But my next step is going to be to put this on the back. That was how I chose to do it. And then these. And if this is all wobbly, then I can't do that very well. All right, so I'll be back a sec. We're ready to attach this to the back here. And of course I had taken this apart, so I have like a little glue marks here, but you just need a dot of glue here and here. That super glue could be okay. I'm gonna go ahead and set this way. It might not be the best angle for you to see just yet. But what I'm doing is I'm using those front legs to tell me how far up I should go on the back. And I mean, I could try to give you an exact measurement, but what if your legs are off a little bit? Then your seat wouldn't be level. It might not be that big of a deal. But what I'm gonna do, and I'll need to stop the camera again because I'm gluing that pasteboard again, which takes a little bit longer. But what I'm going to do is I'll hold that and let that glue really well. Then what I'm going to do, all I have left is to attach these on the side. So I want to wait for that to glue a little bit, that glue to dry. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put this. It's hard for me to hold this steady and put that in there. And I'm going to just glue these sides on. I would wait until this is drier if I were you, because you know you're going to want to do the bottom one first, and that's not a big deal, but then you're going to need to turn this around, and you don't want this one falling off when you go to do this one and turn it over. You know what I mean? Like I can go ahead and do this, but then I've still got to be patient. I really can't get out of being patient and waiting for that back to dry. Oh, I'm glad that didn't go on the ground. And so I can do this, but then I can't get out of it. I'm going to have to wait again. And of course I want to make sure that I am even. I'm using my board to help me, and I want it to be in alignment with the front. See, this is very difficult to show you without picking it up, and it's just not dry. But basically, you know that this needs to be at the same height as the other two struts. Okay, so I'm going to pause, let that dry real well, and then the last thing I'm going to do is just put this on. Okay, and I'll come back and show you the final. So there we go. That's pretty good and dry. So there's a little fella. On the bottom, I just wanted to let you know, like, this leg was apparently a little bit off, and this was kind of wobbly. So what I did is I just took my Exacto and I very carefully shaved off a little end of that. And now he sits just fine. You know, hopefully this helped you out. You enjoyed doing it. And please subscribe.